everybody. I'm Ben.
I'm Daniel.
This is The Way.
And today we're kind of going to go a little bit in the direction similar to our last video. We talked about discerning and listening to God. Ben shared about his story about going down to California and how he was kind of trying to figure out how he heard God and how he heard God in different ways. And so I'm going to share a little bit of a story about my life. Back a couple years ago, it was 2020, 2021, I took a gap year. And then the next summer, I was working at a YMCA, and I was about to go back to university. And I met this girl. We're gonna call her Cheryl. And we started hanging out and started really getting to know each other. And I didn't super like her at first, but over the time hanging out with her, she just became like, I really started to like her a lot. We started to make this really good connection, and I was just kind of praying, like, because I'd never been in a relationship before, and I'd always wanted to be in a relationship. It was something that was kind of that I wanted, right? And as I was praying about it, like, I wanted to hear God tell me that I could. And that's what I heard, is that he said, sure, God said, sure, you can do that. And so I did just that. I started dating this girl, and she went to school in Minnesota, so very far away from where I was at. And I believe it was 3,224 miles from where I was at. Yes, I did maps that. And as we began this distance relationship, my first ever relationship, there were a couple things that I was excited about, because she said she was Catholic, and she was attractive, and she was athletic, and she was fun and funny and silly, all these things. And so we spent a lot of time on video chat and texting and Snapchatting, and we spent 3 months before we actually saw each other again. I know, it was crazy. And then come Thanksgiving, we started hanging out, and like I said, I'd never been in a relationship before, and this wasn't the perfect relationship for me, because God didn't say yes. When discerning things, when I'm asking God questions and I'm trying to pray about things, God gives me usually 3 categories of answer. Yes, which is his plan, and that's a go for it. A no, which is like, don't do it because something bad's going to happen type of thing. And then there's that third category. That's a sure, a maybe, a you can, a be peaceful. Sometimes I get nothing, like the word nothing. Variety of answers that have different meanings, and then that's where some more discernment comes in, is trying to figure out what else should I ask to figure out what I need to know. What I found out through this experience is that sure is not the best. It'll I'm not gonna die. It's not gonna hurt me too bad, but it's not God's plan for me. And so what I've learned, and sadly I have continued to learn, because sometimes the things we want, God says sure to, that sure is something I want to run away from. Like, I shouldn't want the sure, because it's not God's plan. And just in the way the relationship went, it was very much right off the bat. We were not. I was already stepping away from my faith, but as our relationship went, she pulled me farther away from my faith, because she didn't have any faith. She was someone who was Catholic, mostly in name only, and so we started to, if you have a new relationship and you've never done it, it is difficult to not, especially when you're attracted to someone, to not start to slowly walk down a road that leads to things you don't want to go until you're married, obviously. And so in our very shortened time, I saw her for Thanksgiving, and then she flew back to Minnesota, and then I saw her for 2-3 weeks for my Christmas break. But in those short times, we kind of didn't do a lot of interacting. We did a lot more things that I greatly regret doing. And through that, I started to slowly realize that maybe this wasn't the kind of thing that I was looking for. like there were things that I started to slowly pick up. Maybe that this wasn't the thing I wanted in my life, or that wasn't the right part of, like, that wasn't a characteristic that I wanted in a partner. But every time that I would ask God, like, am I meant to be in this relationship? God was very clear that I was meant to stay where I was at, stay in the relationship. And so as that progressed, I was internally kind of trying to, like, figure out where I was supposed to go. And so sometimes God asks us to, if there's a sure, and then we're there, then he's like, okay, now you've chosen to go this direction. Now I need you to go through all the way to the end. It was she came back for spring break.
Yeah.
And I spent spring break with her. And that was the time when I started to really solidify that, like, this is something that isn't healthy for me. And so I ended up dating her until that following August. And throughout that time, God still was telling me to stay put, stay put, stay put. But I was internally like, this is not the place for me to be. And so it was kind of an internal fight a little bit with God, actually.
Yeah.
Of, like, I don't feel like I'm meant to be here. This isn't healthy for me, but you keep telling me to be here. How do I authentically be here while also still knowing, oh, I forgot to mention that I had prayed about, am I going to marry her partway through our relationship? And God said no. And so there was also me internally battling that. Because for me, I feel like my parents did a phenomenal job instilling in me at a young age that relationships are a path to marriage. And that's exactly how you should look at them and how you should think about them. That you're dating for marriage, not for fun, right? Because if we're dating for fun, then you get a daughter.
You get a daughter.
You get a daughter, right?
Which
like,
is a good thing.
Daughter's a great thing. But when you're dating for fun, there's no worry about tomorrow quite as much. It's just more like in the moment type of thing, which you should definitely have in the moment fun, but not that kind of fun.
Okay.
Where was I going?
Did you have more?
Yes.
Yeah.
But so it was a little bit of a fight because I knew I wasn't going to marry her, but God kept telling me to be in the relationship, and I just couldn't understand how do I do both of these things? How do I know that there's no trajectory for me in this relationship, but I'm still supposed to be here? So fast forward just a hair, we get to August, and I break up with her, and it was not an easy breakup. She was very upset. I spent the next 2-3 months really working on myself and trying to make myself better and reflecting. But I've spent, since last August, a year ago, I've still spent the chunks of that year still processing the emotional trauma that I kind of picked up from that relationship. She didn't have the best family life, and she brought a lot of that into our relationship. And so really it's just when you're discerning something, if it's a yes, go for it. If it's a no, don't go for it. And if it's anything in between, pump the brakes and really consider what it is, because there's longer repercussions for that kind of a thing. And the other thing is that I'm talking about a relationship, and Ben's talked about his relationship with his baby mama. But discerning relationships, am I supposed to be in this relationship? It's not just about romantic relationships, right? Ben and I are amazing friends, and we build each other up a lot and all the time. And really, he's the person that I've been looking for years.
Thank you.
Somehow I found him,
The unicorn.
in looking for a friend, a partner, a relationship, whatever it is, doesn't matter if it's romantic or not. It's really important to bring God into that conversation. In my relationship with Cheryl, my ex-girlfriend, we didn't have God involved in our relationship at all. We weren't praying together. We weren't asking God together about it. it was very much like I was just hanging on to my faith a little bit, but it was not a part of our relationship. And so Ben and I, we go pray together. We said that in a previous video, and we're doing this, and we push each other so hard spiritually to be better. And so I think it's really important to have that in a relationship, but also it doesn't have to be faith, but like you need to be bringing God into everything you do in all your relationships.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess a couple questions for you. That was a lot, and I've heard a lot of this before with Daniel. We've talked a lot. Actually,
Ben was there for me right when I left the relationship.
Yeah.
We actually started hanging out right at that moment, and I helped him with his thing with his baby mama, and he kind of helped me to not fall into a deeper hole than I could have with my relationship.
Right, but like I remember the first couple months hanging out with you. You had just broken up with Cheryl, and so you were still processing everything, even though you were the one who like left it.
Yeah.
You were still processing it. You still missed her. There were still some things.
Well,
there's the good stuff that weren't.
Yeah. There's the good things that you miss because every relationship has good parts to it.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so, that's kind of when I met Daniel and he was talking about Cheryl a lot, and he kept telling me like, yeah, God told me to break up with her, and I think that when he told me to be with her, it was like a maybe. I didn't really know what the maybe meant, and when I hear God, it's more like I do hear like a yes, and I do hear a clear no, but I normally don't get like a maybe. I normally get a just like nothing sort of thing where I'm left to make a decision. And so I guess the question for you, when you hear God and you hear like a maybe or sure or do your thing, what is that to you? Is that like, when you hear that, is it like God is trusting you with the decision? Is he leaving it up to your free will?
Yeah, so
sort of thing.
So, obviously when it's a yes, it's God's plan, and obviously when it's a no, it's not God's plan. And when it's a sure, we have God puts desires on our hearts, right? And so when discerning, it's, what do you think you should do, but also whatever the things that you want within reason, God has put on your heart those desires, right? So like if you're discerning priesthood or married life, and you really want to be a father, well then that's something to consider, right?
Yeah.
Because that's desires God's put on your heart. And so you can take multiple paths. Like I could have, I dated Cheryl. I could have not, right? And so that was the option. It was up to me. It wasn't the exact plan God had for me, but it was an acceptable alternative, right? And it wasn't going to take me too far off the greater path, and that's why it wasn't a no, right? Like I still met Ben. I'm very back to being very involved in my faith now, right? So obviously it didn't take me that far away from God because I was able to find him, to go back. So with the shores, it's really like you can do it if you want to. I don't think you should, but you can do it if you want to. The maybes is really, the maybe a be peaceful is like wait. Just wait on me because I'm going to bring something to you, right? So usually like if I were to ask, should I date Cheryl, God wouldn't necessarily give me a maybe. That's more of like a yes/no decision. It's like usually he doesn't even say maybe. It's more of like a be peaceful, or it's just radio silence sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a moment where I need to do more discernment and more thinking about what is the thing, where is it going to lead me, and that's where God's given us a brain and intuition and all that kind of stuff to kind of like figure out and discern. So you can kind of sit down and think about. You can walk down the road and think, where is this going to take me, and is that a healthy place for me to be?
Yeah.
Right? Or how is that going to contribute to where I'm trying to go? Right? Like I'm trying to be a teacher, or I'm trying to become fit. Right? Like if I want to go to the gym, is eating that donut going to be good for me? God might not be like, no, you shouldn't eat that donut. But is that going to help me become shredded? Probably not, right? Like, it's that kind of a thing where he leaves it up to you because it's not gonna ruin your life or take you off of God's path, right? Eating that donut isn't gonna take you. Probably it's not gonna send you to hell.
But if you eat more than one donut a day, or you're eating a donut every single day, and you're not like
Right,
working out,
exactly. Yeah. So
you'll balloon up. Or maybe not even that. Some people have really good mentality, but it might not be the healthiest for you. It might
right,
clog
exactly.
your arteries. You might get cholesterol. You know.
There's
Sort
lots
of
of
thing.
there's lots of things, and that's the same thing for choices in life, right? We're talking about donuts and working out,
Yeah.
but it's the same thing in life. Should I go to this university or that university? Well, in the grand scheme of things, all education is almost the same, right? You have the same curriculums that get bought across the board. It's just where do you, like, that's where God might call you a specific place, but when I was discerning where to go to university, like, it was really like God let me choose, and I chose based on factors that I felt were important to me, which was finances and location, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to name and, credibility of this program or that program, right? Like, so God gives you a choice in that sense,
Yeah.
for sure.
So my next question for you. So,
Yeah.
For most people listening to this, I would say that, like, as Catholics, and even if you're not Catholic, as Christians, when we're in a relationship, should be for discernment of whether we're going to get married or not. I'm talking about romantic relationships. You should be discerning: is this person going to be my husband? Is this person going to be my wife? Because this is healthier. Otherwise, for the most of the part, you're wasting your time,
Right.
and you're wasting the other person's time.
Right, exactly.
My question for you: so, when you asked God if you could date Libby, He said maybe, and then
He said
you
sure.
You said sure, and you decided to go for it.
Yeah. Because I wanted it. It was an internal, I want this.
Right, and then later, as you get into the relationship, you're starting to see more signs and starting to hear from God. She's not your wife, but He didn't tell you to leave quite
Right,
yet.
exactly.
What would you say was the benefit of you being in that relationship, since you knew she wasn't going to be your wife? Was there anything that you learned from it, and do you think God kept you in there for a certain purpose for you?
So, she was going through a lot of tough stuff with her family. Her mom had a very unhealthy dynamic with her and her father and just her siblings. And I picked pretty quickly up on that unhealthy dynamic that her mother had. It made me uncomfortable. I didn't really like it a lot at all. I remember going home and talking to my family and being like, man, I just wish I could hang out with her and not have to deal with her mother at all. But as our relationship went on, her parents separated, and then her father filed for divorce. And so that was really, really hard for her. And as she was processing that, I was able to be there for her, to kind of help and support her. And so I think for one reason, that was part of the reason why God wanted me to stay there, because she needed the support of having someone who was steady. And I know that I'm not a perfect human, but I am much more emotionally stable than she was or her family was. And my family was much more emotionally stable as well than her family.
And she was being used more as a weapon, and you were there to love on her. You weren't there to manipulate her into this should go this way in the divorce.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Her parents, it was just not a great situation, and she got the brunt force of that. And then the other thing for me is that, so I was able to be there for her. She had some tough moments. It was rough. For me, what I benefited from was I learned what to not look for in someone else. I learned, I really learned the fact that we become our parents. Like, I see myself become my dad all the time. It bothers me because there's parts of my dad that, while I love my dad, right, we all have things that we don't like about other people. We all have things we do we don't like, right? But the more that I grow older, the more that I notice I have some of those tendencies that my dad does, good and bad, right? And so I learned a lot of that from watching her kind of almost turn a little bit more into her mother.
Yeah.
As our relationship went on. And so as we spent that last summer together, before I broke up with her, we spent a lot more time together, because I was trying to make it work. And I think that if I had broken up with her earlier, that I wouldn't have had unresolved feelings, and I wouldn't have had a really good reason to do it. It would have just been more like, I just feel like I should break up with you.
Yeah.
As opposed to when I broke up with her, There were solid, concrete reasons, and I could point to them, right? Things that were not good for me. And so that had a lot more closure for me. And like Ben said, I still needed months to work through and get closure on the relationship. And for the most part, I've gotten the closure that I need from that relationship and kind of moved on, right?
Yeah.
But if I had broken up with her earlier, I wouldn't have had the closure that I needed. Like, as I was processing it, starting in March, I broke up with her in August, and in March, I started to wonder, should I be in this relationship? And I talked with a bunch of people, because part of discernment is getting other people's opinions, people that you value, right? Like, if I'm discerning something, I'm going to ask Ben what he thinks, because I value Ben's opinion very highly, right? I'll ask my mom and my dad and my sister, right? Like, people that you value in your life. I asked people, not Ben, because he wasn't in my life at that point.
Yeah.
But he would have said this too.
Yeah.
I had multiple people. I had a spiritual director tell me this as well. This is not a healthy relationship for you. You should get out of this relationship. But I wasn't emotionally at a place where it was like, where I could do that, because I didn't want to quit. I didn't want to be the person that just ditched. Partially because she looked at her father leaving her mother as doing that. So, for me, I needed more of a reason. Did that answer your question?
That answered my question. This will kind of lead. So, you mentioned, you were talking about how we kind of become our parents as we get older, right? For good and for bad sometimes. And so, you said that for you, one of the red flags that you were seeing is that she was starting to become more like her mother.
Right.
But the difference between her and like you becoming more like your dad is that you seem to be more, like, you still love your family and you're with them, but you're much more independent. They don't necessarily have a bunch of influence over you.
Yeah.
But with her, at the point where she was at in her life, she was still having tons of influence. You know, her mom would call during dates.
Right.
She would get super involved.
Yeah.
And like kind of lead Cheryl into different decisions in her life that maybe weren't best for her, right? And so when you guys are dating, you know, you should meet their parents and you should hopefully look for a good familial situation, but God's not always going to call you to be with someone who has a good family situation. What you should look for instead is, in the Bible it says that when a man gets married, he'll leave his mother and the father, and the two will become one flesh. So you want to look for someone who is more independent in their decision making, and even though they might have traits of their parents, they're working towards, you know, they're still their own person, and they're working towards God.
Right.
Because you don't want to have that influence of their family making huge decisions in your life when you're...
Part of it was also, like, looking for personality of growth, right? Looking for a growth mindset in someone who's working to become better and working to change, right? Ben and I are both growing and trying to become the best men that we can, the best people that we can be, right? And a lot of the times when we're talking, that's what we're talking about. Hey, are you going to the gym? Hey, how are you doing in your faith life, right? Oh, what's your job? How can you do that better? That kind of a thing, right? We're trying to become better. And my ex-girlfriend, a lot of her personality was very much, this is what I do, this is what I'm going to do, and that's how I'm going to do it. Very much, she didn't have a growth mindset. And that's super important, is when you're looking for someone, if you're trying to grow, you need to find someone who's also trying to grow. So, and then also, as far as Ben was saying, you do need to also find someone, their family can be the most important thing to them, and that should be a thing. Like, my family is one of the most important things to me, but I can make my own decisions, and I get to make my own decisions, even if my parents disagree with me. We've had disagreements, and I've walked out of their house and been like, that's okay, we disagreed, we didn't come to a place where we're fine, but it's okay, because they're still going to love me, and everything's going to be fine. And my ex didn't have that situation. Her mom was very manipulative with her and very much kept pulling her back into that kind of clutches and very much used her a lot. So definitely when looking for someone who isn't somewhat independent from their family, still loves their family. That's really important. But I think a growth mindset, because if you have a growth mindset, you're not necessarily going to hold on to your parents quite as much.
Yeah. I guess so. That was like kind of part of the next question I had for you. And as you're going through, you said that you haven't had very many relationships before this ex, and so you didn't really know what to look for in a girl.
Right.
I guess in closing, was there any sort of like signs for you, like things that you saw in her that was like, I don't want to have this in a wife?
Yeah, so I guess the other thing is, like, in a relationship, it's important to not only spend time with the person, but spend time with them with your friends, spend time with them with their friends, and then spend time with them with their family and your family. Because it was in seeing her interact with my friends and with my family that I started to realize that that wasn't something that I wanted. Realistically, the biggest thing was when I started to realize that she wasn't able to grow very much. That's something that was a huge like turn off for me, because she didn't push me to be a better man. She didn't push me to be a better Catholic, and she accepted me where I was at, which was fine. But I want someone who pushes me. I want someone who I want to be better for, and who wants me to be better. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, yeah.
So, hey, thanks for everyone coming on here. We'd sure love it if there's any part of Daniel's story or you had more questions for him. We'd love for you to drop comments in the comment section. We'd love for you to tell us what other topics you'd like us to talk about. And also, if you could hit the like, comment, and subscribe, that'd be awesome, so you can see more of our content as it comes through.
Thanks for watching, guys.